Welcome again to Joe Stunner Boxing. I want to talk to you about journeyman because I was having this discussion with a couple of people a couple of days ago. And whenever you talk about the great journeyman of the last, I don't know, 20 years maybe, 25 years, I'm talking about journeymen who take on world-class opponents, not necessarily, the centurions of the British domestic scene, but fighters who consistently take on world-class opponents, former champions, up-and-coming fringe contenders, all that sort of thing. The one that keeps getting mentioned in terms of the journeyman role, and it's a worthy name because I really loved watching this guy, was Emmanuel Augustus. Now, this video is not going to be about Emmanuel Augustus. I may do a separate video because he certainly deserves one. This is a guy who fought everyone, including Mayweather, and he finished with 38 wins, 20 KOs, 34 defeats with 5 stoppages inside the distance, and 6 draws. So he had a winning record. I mean, despite everyone that he fought. And Mayweather famously said, he was the finest technician that he'd ever fought, and had he had the right backing and the right training and the right promotion and management, he could have been a world champion, or he could have been certainly a legitimate top 10 or top 5 contender. Emmanuel Augustus, who actually was previously called Emmanuel Burton, that's when I used to watch him. I first became aware of him. I think I was living in America at the time. I just moved to America, and he certainly had. Oh no, actually, I think it was just before I moved to America, because he fought John Thaxton in Britain and stopped him in 7 rounds. And he beat lots of other people. He went on little winning streaks, but he just could never quite get, the right matches made at the right time. Like obviously Mayweather stopped him in 9. Mickey Ward, that was a tremendous fight. Mickey Ward outpointed him over 10. And he fought, he lost to Leonard Doreen and he lost to a lot of fighters, but he ended up with a winning record. Now, someone who didn't have a winning record and who never ever gets mentioned when it comes to great journeymen of the last 20 or 30 years is a heavyweight called Marion Wilson. And why am I making a video about this guy who, well, I know a lot of you have never even heard of him. It's because he deserves his own video. Because let's have a go through his record, okay? Bear in mind this guy, 6 foot 1 inch heavyweight, fed to everyone from former world champions to hot prospects, fringe contenders, given, fights at 2 days' notice, would come in. Let's go through a few names that he faced, all right? Well, he finished his career by fighting Oliver McCall. In fact, he fought him twice in his final 3 fights. This is Marion Wilson I'm talking about. And sandwiched in between was Chaz Witherspoon, who at the time was undefeated. He fought Samuel Peter. This is back in 2002. He had his final fight, by the way, in 2007. 2002, he fought Samuel Peter. Peter was undefeated and up and coming. He also fought Tony Thompson, who at the time only had 1 loss. He fought a couple of guys back-to-back, Robert Wiggins and Robert Davis, who were both being groomed as potential heavyweight contenders. Both had a good punch, really good punch. He fought Hasim Rahman in 2000. We know about Rahman, former undisputed champ. He fought Larry Donald, who was a very good technician at the time. Donald was 34 wins, 1 draw, 1 defeat. The fight before that, he fought Oleg Maskayev, who at the time was 14-2 and would go on to win the WBC heavyweight title. He fought Derek Jefferson when Jefferson was undefeated, 17-0. Jefferson, a tremendous hitter. He fought for the world title, I think, against, was it Vladimir or Vitaly? One of them, Vladimir, I think, and got done in 2 or 3 rounds. But he could certainly crack. He really could. Then he fought before that he fought David Izon, who at the time was a fringe contender, pretty decent, had 20 wins and 3 defeats. The fight before that, he fought a very hard-punching cruiserweight called Ezra Sellers and actually had him on the floor. Sellers would go on to have a classic fight with Tony Thompson, not Tony Thompson, excuse me, Carl Thompson of Britain. For was it? It was it wasn't a title fight, but what a tremendous fight! Go and see that. Ezra Sellers versus Carl Thompson. Carl the Cat Thompson, former WBO cruiserweight champ. Anyway, getting back to Marion Wilson, he fought Greg Page in 1998. Prior to that, he fought Corey Sanders. He fought a guy called Robert Hawkins, who, again, another big heavyweight puncher. He fought, prior to that, the fight before that, he fought Carl Williams, who, of course, we know as being a former world title challenger. In 1997, he fought an undefeated, well, he was undefeated throughout his whole career because he ended up in prison, but Ike Abiabuchi, who was 14-0 at the time. The fight before that, he fought Olin Norris, former WBC cruiserweight champ, who was 46 wins, 4 defeats at the time. He fought an up-and-comer called Terence Lewis, who was 15-1. Again, another puncher that they were grooming for stardom. The fight before that, he fought Obed Sullivan, who was 13-1-1. Sullivan, a fringe contender, decent enough fighter. Same with David Izon in 1995. He fought him. Izon at the time was 14-0 and would go on to be a contender. Andrew Galotta, he fought. This is Marion Wilson fought Andrew Galotta in 1995. Galotta at the time was undefeated, 22 wins, no draws, no defeats. The fight before that, he fought Shannon Briggs, 21 wins, no draws, no defeats. Briggs at the time undefeated. The fight before that, he fought the Canadian Kurt Johnson, who'd go on to become a top 10 contender. He fought Wilson. Fought Zelko Marovic, who would go on to fight Lennox Lewis for the title. He was undefeated at the time with 13 wins, no draws, no defeats. The fight before that, Marion Wilson fought Jimmy Thunder, who, was a decent enough fringe contender. The fight before that, he fought Ray Mercer, who at the time was 23 wins, two defeats, no draws. In 1994, he fought Vaughn Bean, who would go on to challenge for the unified title against Michael Mora. And Andrew Galotta was actually fought Andrew Galotta twice, because in 1993 he fought him for the first time. This is Marion Wilson. And the fight before that, also in 1993, he fought Jeremy Williams, who at the time was undefeated, 7-0, and had a reputation for being a very, very big puncher. In 1992, he fought Tyrell Biggs. Tyrell Biggs was at the time was 24 wins, 5 defeats, past his best, but still a decent fringe contender. Franz Botha, he fought him in 1992. Botha at the time was 14 wins, no draws, no defeats. And so we go on and on and on. He actually turned pro in 1989, Marion Wilson. Now I've given you that absolute laundry list of fighters. A few ex-world champs, plenty of people who fought for world titles. And I've given you this list of it's like a who's who of, say, from the 90s to the noughties. But the reason I mention this is that Marion Wilson, despite fighting every one of those people, he finished with a record of 12 wins with 5 KOs, 4 draws, 41 defeats. But here's the thing, he was never, ever stopped. None of those people who I mentioned, and I'm sure you recognise most of the names, and if you're a hardcore boxing fan, you recognise all of them, none of them stopped him. 12 wins, 41 defeats, 4 draws, never stopped. Marion Wilson, nicknamed the Jackhammer, 6'1" heavyweight, small heavyweight, absolutely rock hard, teeth tough son of a This guy was an incredible journeyman, incredible world-class journeyman, a guy who would take the world-class people the distance all the time and would win rounds. I mean, he didn't. I don't think he beat any of the people I mentioned, but he did get a split draw with Ray Mercer when he fought him. I mean, that's how good this guy could have been. And people forget these things. He's one of those guys who slipped through the net in terms of history, because I think I think as with Emmanuel Augustus, with the right backing, with the right promotion, he could have gone on to do something in boxing, but he went down the journeyman route. And my God, I mean, what a servant to the game. None of the people I mentioned stopped him. Quite amazing, really. So I just wanted to make you aware of that name, Marion Wilson, one of the great journeymen of the last 30 years, shall we say, 25, 30 years. Remember that name, because put some respect on it, because he deserves it. All right. If you've got anything to say, got any comments to leave, if you can think of maybe another great journeyman who is overlooked, name him in the comments. Leave your comments below. I'll have a read of them. Please subscribe to the channel if you're new. Hit the like button, and I'll catch you later. Bye for now.